Well, not to put too fine a point on it, I still think you're full of crap. Scott smiled to take a little of the sting out, but not that much. They dropped out of hyperspace a week back, were running on the new and improved gravity drives, and the old argument had been lit and burning almost since the crew left the sleep chambers. The others were working the plant or attending to ship routine, and the two pilots were alone in the control module, staring into the blackness of the big deep. Still a few weeks out from the next port, but it was starting to look like a few years. Tom, whose still short dark hair had been cropped to his skull before he'd gone into the sleep chamber, was up on his soapbox again, looking kind of like a military college freshman in Free Speak Alley. Scott stroked his blonde beard and waited for the reply he knew was coming. Around them, the stale ship air smelled like a gym locker. Tom didn't miss a beat. Sure, I'm full of crap, me and everybody else, but I'm telling you, the bill is going to come due sooner or later. You can't just keep raping virgin planets, stripping them of everything valuable and leaving the hulks behind. I don't recall that I stuck my dick into the dirt anywhere lately, Scott said. You know what I mean. No, I don't. The Lecter, in case you fell asleep during the orientation session, is a tug. We're towing a half-full barge with about 15 million tons of rendered fish and animal products, and the processor that did it to collect more meat on the hoof from the poor suckers on Ryushi. A bunch of shit-kicker cowboys. No, not even cows. They're Rinth boys, living on a middle-of-nowhere planet. Scott, and, he continued, ignoring Tom, and the barge, this ship, the cowboys, and you, and me, are all owned by body and soul by the Corp. Talk to the old man Chigusa with your raping the environment complaints. Jesus, you're so damn close-minded. Whoa! Scott waved his hands over the controls, trying to get a fix on the blip. Here in the middle of the big deep, where there was nothing but the vessel and occasional hydrogen atoms to bounce off it, something had just shot past them so fast it wasn't even a blur. And gaining speed like a bitch too. Okay, yeah, it was a couple of hundred clicks away, but out here, that was almost a sideswipe. Goddamn cheap fucking Doppler, Tom said, trying to get the computer to adjust to its scan. What the hell was that? A ship? Not hardly. That acceleration would probably turn people into seat pancakes. Nova debris, maybe. Old rock spat out by a real big planet buster blast. Yeah? Maybe it's God on his way to the final reckoning. Maybe scrub your conscience clean, Scotty. I'm just a grunt, pal. Don't blame me for the way the universe gets run. Fucking spectrograph missed it altogether. He slammed the heel of his hand against the console. Nobody wasted any money on these ships for such things as decent hardware. Like we were going to chase and catch it even if it was solid platinum, right? Scott smiled. It's not our job, buddy. One more rock in the dark. Who cares? Seated in front of the sensor array of the Netese, Yayinde watched the alien ship dwindle in their wake. He was leader. The very name meant brave one, but he knew the warriors called him the Chunde when they thought his ears too dull to hear them. That name meant different knife, and it referred to his lower left tusk, broken in a bare-handed fight against the hard meat, the kind that Amada, they of the black armoured exoskeletons and acid blood. He smiled inwardly at that name. It could be considered an insult, but he was proud of it. The hard meat, save for the queens, were no smarter than dogs, but they were fierce and deadly game. Good prey upon which to train the young warriors. He could have had the tusk capped and reground, but he had left the broken fang. A dull stump to remind himself of any warriors who felt brave or particularly stupid, and only one Yautja of all had ever faced the hard meat unarmed and walked away. As befitted a true warrior, the Chunde himself never spoke of the battle, but let others tell the tale, holding a serious mandible at the embellishments they added in the singing of it. He was leader of the Netese, son and grandson of ship leaders and warrior trainers, and he bowed to no one in his skill with blade or burner. He had taken hundreds of young males out to learn the hunt, and had lost but a dozen, most of whom would still be among the living had they obeyed his orders. But he sighed at the ship now, so far behind him as to be invisible even to the sensor's keen eyes. Umans flew in that vessel. He knew of them, the Umans, though he himself had never hunted them. They were tool folk, had weapons equal to that of the Yautja, and were, if the stories could be believed, the ultimate Pior de Amada, soft meat, but with deadly stingers, the Umans, a true test of skill. What were they doing out here? Where were they bound? A pity he was locked into this hunt, responsible for a score of itchy would-be warriors, full of themselves and ready to show off their prowess. Well, someday he would hunt them, the Umans. For now he had a ship to fly, hunts to prepare. He switched the electronic eyes that watched the hard-meat queen in the nest they had made for her deep belly in the ship. The image blossomed on the plate in front of him. Tall she was, the queen, twice his own height, massive even in the reduced gen pull of the ship, probably 4 times his weight. Black as a nest cleaner's hands, gleaming dully under the lights, the queen looked like a giant zabin bug, with the addition of a long, segmented tail and smaller, supplemental arms jutting from her torso. Her comb rose high like antlers, flat and flaring, and she had 2 sets of needle-toothed jaws, one nesting in the other and able to extrude a span from her mouth to grab like pincers. Freed, she would be a formidable opponent, fast, powerful, intelligent, but she was not free, the queen. She was bound in bands of glex, wound in restraints that could resist the sharpest blades, the hottest fires, the strongest acids. Bound and made into nothing more than an egg-laying captive, subject to the will of the ship's leader. A conveyor ran beneath her massive ovipositor, catching the precious eggs and carrying them to the packing compartment. There they were fed into the robot crawler in the sucker ships connected to the Ntese like leeches on either side. Inside the suckers, the robots, treaded machines designed for one purpose, prepared themselves to transport and place the eggs on fertile ground. Like a mechanical mother, the robots would leave the eggs where they could open, and the crab-like first stage hard meat could find game to infect with the next stage. Those embryos would eventually chew their way free of the hapless host to become drones, the final stage for most of the hard meat, prey to the warriors he had brought to learn the rules of the hunt. Stupid, but deadly, the hard meat would teach the main lesson the young ones needed to know. Move well or die. There was no room for error in the hunt. Deshande looked at the fettered queen, the fleshy egg she laid. His own trophy wall on the homeworld held 6 of the hard meat skulls, bleached and clean, including one he had killed with his bare hands, as well as a queen, taken during a hellish hunt in which 9 already blooded warriors had died. He had killed 50 others, but had kept, as was proper, only those he thought worthy of the wall. They were fierce, but usually no challenge for one such as himself. If he had occasion to face one on these hunts, he would limit himself to spear or wrist knife. After all, any archer could burn the hard meat. A leader had to handicap himself. The females smiled upon a brave male more often than they did the others. The Chunde had never lacked for female attention before, nor did he intend to begin now. He had sired 73 suckers over the years since he had first become a blooded warrior, and he was planning on reaching 80 by the end of the next breeding season. A Yautja did what a Yautja had to do to bolster his line, and when his final hunt took place, he intended to leave behind a legion of younglings. He grinned. Any hunt could be the final hunt. That was the path. But he did not think this would be the one. This was routine. He had led a score of missions such as this one, and he could do it blindfolded, with dull blades and a dead burner in his sleep. An easy run. Gekemun. Simple. He switched off the eyes watching the queen. He should go and release some of the pressure that had built up among the young males. A couple of them in particular were showing signs of preparing to do something stupid, such as challenging a blooded warrior or even the leader himself. Young males were not a whole lot brighter than the hard meat, the Chunde sometimes thought. He could still recall his pre-warrior days when he had known everything, was the bravest Yautja ever born, and proud to prove it at the slightest provocation. Ah, the days of his invincible youth. Surely there had been no male who had swaggered more, thought more highly of himself, acted as if he were the linchpin around which the galaxy would someday turn. A creature of destiny, he had thought, different from the other obnoxious would-be heroes who strutted and stood ready to be offended at the hint of disrespect. He recalled an instance when a younger male had glanced at him with what he thought was an inappropriate demeanour, had allowed his gaze to linger a quarter second longer than the galaxy's would-be linchpin had deemed respectful. How he had puffed up like a poisoned toad and stepped forward to issue a claw challenge, and that only because death plunges were forbidden for the unblooded. How when crossing the empty space between himself and the insolent pup who had offended him, he had been knocked sprawling by a female going about her business. By the time he had recovered, The disrespectful one had gone, and the female, if she had even noticed, had also continued on her way. He grinned, tusk going wide. Such a long time ago that had been, before most of the current class of pups had been a sap in their father's rods. They would learn, just as he had learned. They were not the God's gift to the universe. He would see to it, or he would see them dead. Either way was the path.